Before we get started today, I have to make a comment regarding my last video. Remember when I said this? There's a good chance that with how Glow LED operates, that by the time that this video comes out, they'll either have already thought of the problem and are currently working on a solution, or they have already solved the problem and released a new product or an add-on that would make this problem go away. Well, apparently they've already done this with their hybrid skins. I do plan to check this out whenever I get the chance to get my hands on them. In the meantime, I've changed the description of that video so that you guys can check them out. I'll also drop a link to the hybrid skins in this video. In the meantime, I still love my coffin skins, and I still plan to use them for a long time coming. So if you're interested in that product, you should check out my last video. Second, I've been told that I kept saying Glow LED in my last video, and apparently it's pronounced Glow LEDs with a plural, so sorry, Kurt. Okay, on with the actual video. So this is interesting. The Glow LEDs Supreme Whites were designed to be somewhat inspired by the KEK Whites. Now, for those of you who don't know, old KEK, and I'm talking about Candy Creations before they were owned by Throwlights, once had these whites that have since become discontinued and have gone on to have this mythical status among people in the community. And a lot of people consider them this gold standard when it comes to whites for gloving. That said, I never got to try these, so I have no nostalgia for them. And you know, Glow LEDs are not the only company trying to recreate that gold standard. For example, someone once told me that the new YGM gloves were inspired by the Candy Creations gloves. And you know for a fact that Throwlights, since they own the Candy Creations name now, are doing their best to kind of capitalize off of that they supposedly have the original formula or the designs, and they're kind of, you know, using that to market their whites. But again, I never really got to try them when they were originally being sold. And that way I think it's good because I can just judge them for what they are. Now, what surprised me on the immediate about the Glow LED Supremes is that they actually remind me of the slim gloves that used to be really popular back in the day. I know Amazing had a set, and in a way, because I'm more familiar with that, that's kind of going to be my reference point, because these grip your hands and fingers a lot more snug than your standard set of whites that you would get from like Amazing, which I kind of consider like the Budweiser of gloving whites. Now, in this comparison of gloving whites and beer, I'm just going to say I'm not really a snob. I'll drink any beer as long as it's ice cold. And that's kind of the same with me and whites. I'll use any whites as long as they're fresh out of a pack. Amazing whites, you know, they were never the best. And, you know, they were somewhat loose. But, you know, in a lot of ways, that's actually a good thing if you think about it. Because especially when they're fresh out of a pack, you still have the stitching at its strongest. And because it's a lot more of a looser stitching than what you would find, for example, here, they're really good for giving you the most dexterity possible. The problem kind of comes from the fact that after a couple of sessions, you're going to have to deal with the fact that the stitching has basically been pulled apart, and that's when you start getting your micro lights kind of flinging off your fingers, and it's especially the worst at your pinkies. You know, I'll be doing some whips or doing some flails, and while I'm doing them, you know, physics and gravity are just gonna have that pinky fly off your finger, and then I have to do something mid-show like this to kind of put them back together. People say, oh, that was a cool concept, but really, no, I'm just trying to put my damn lights back on my damn fingers. And I don't really have that issue here. In fact, after about a month or so, the stitching is still really tight. It wraps around my fingers and my lights really well, especially my pinkies. And even when I'm being my most aggressive when I'm throwing a light show, I'm never really concerned of my lights slipping off. So if that's something you're worried about, this is something to look out for sure. So as I've mentioned, in terms of the fit, they remind me a lot of original Slim's gloves. That being said, it would be more accurate to call this something of a hybrid. It sits somewhere between something of regular stitching and the slim glove. So this hybrid design has a lot of the tactile and technical functions that made those great, while still maintaining an aesthetic that is more akin to traditional whites. And I really like this design because, like the original Slims, they help your tech specifically in two ways. One, they make them look aesthetically clean because of the slightly slimmer profile. And second, because of the tighter stitching, it almost helps you pop into your various tech positions like very easily. There's a kinesthetic nature to the way that these are made. And I think that if you are into tech, and specifically you like hard, rigid tech positions, I think you will like these a lot. And what I like about these is that despite the fact that they give you the kinesthetic abilities of the original Slims, they don't have a lot of the issues that I have with them. For example, the original Slims have this almost skeletal aesthetic to it. One that I'm not personally a fan of for my style. A lot of people can pull it off, especially if they have these longer, skinnier phalanges, but for someone like me, it's just not my thing, you know? So having the look of classic whites is something that I definitely appreciate. And on top of that, the stitching, because it's not as tight, you don't experience a lot of the stinging pain that you would get from the original Slims. The stitching on those were so tight, and whatever material they were using, after a show, you would almost see the webbing being ingrained in your hands. The stinging pain, you know, was annoying. It just caused a lot of problems. It was like experiencing all the pain of shibari, but none of the pleasure. Now, with this hybrid design, I would say that both of those things that I'm not a big fan of, they just kind of go away. Now, there are some things to note here. First, even though the stitching is not as tight as those original Slims, they are still tighter than the average Amazing White. So if you're not used to something with a tighter stitching, just be aware that, especially when you open them fresh out of a pack, you might feel some muscle strain after your first couple of shows. The stitching should kind of stretch out after you give maybe 3 to 5 shows, and by then you should feel it much easier to stretch out your fingers, but it is something to keep in mind. This is something that I personally had to get used to, because for a while I was using these throw lights gloves, and the stitching on these is a lot looser and gives you a lot more dexterity. I'm someone that prefers to basically flex their hands as far as possible with every whip and every technique. And if you're someone that also likes to do that, this kind of makes it a little bit more difficult because everything is a little tighter. So it's just something to keep in mind. It's not really a detractor. Like, I wouldn't say that this ever caused me to get too tired during a show. But still, if you're not used to a tighter stitched glove and you're more used to something like this, you might feel it when you're giving your first couple of shows. So one thing to keep in mind with these is that I recommend you go one size above. For example, if you are in Amazing Mediums like I am, you're gonna wanna go larges with these. I originally used a set of mediums in preparation for this review, and my original list of complaints and negatives were a bit longer. I felt that, you know, the issues like the tight stitching, limiting a little bit of your dexterity was magnified like tenfold there. But when I moved from mediums to larges, I found that the problems just kind of went away. That being said, if you're just unsure of what your hand size would be with these, Glow LEDs is offering a sampler pack at the moment for $4.99. It is a great deal. You get several whites, and it's a chance for you to try out the sizes before you order a 5-pack or a recharge pack. And in fact, if you have the other 2 gloves left over, they're a good chance for you to let other people try so that they can get a feel for them and know what size that they want. Speaking of price, these go for $3.95 a pair. And originally, I wasn't the biggest fan, especially when you look at Amazing and they're selling theirs for $2.45 each. And I know Throw Lights has the same price for their whites, but still, it's something that I'm not the biggest fan of until I considered this. I've had these whites for about a month now, and I used to change my whites all the time. Like, I would say like once every 2 weeks, and it's been a month since I've used them, and I still really have no reason to change them out. The stitching is still strong. For whatever reason, they're not really that dirty. And when you consider that, the extra dollar is worth it. Because again, I've had these for a month now. They're still relatively clean. And I use this set almost every day. Whatever material they're using, however they're stitching them together, it's high quality. And unless you're some sort of goblin dipping your hands in a puddle of random wook juice, these are gonna last you quite a while. I have this second set of Supreme whites, also in larges, and I'm using a full set of Inovas in these. And you know how big those chips are in those casings. And if anything, these should be stretching out a lot faster than these, which just has a set of Micro Maxes. But these, if anything, are still holding really strong. So overall, is this for you? Personally, I really like these. I'm pretty sure that my next recharge pack that I order are gonna be these. And it's great for people who especially like tech. The aesthetic qualities that they give you with the tighter stitching, as well as the kinesthetic ability to help you pop into your various tech positions easily, it kind of gives it that extra boost for people who really care about that style. That said, I think that the stitching is going to be a bit tight for you, for those of you who are not used to this style of glove. That being said, I do recommend you stick with it. And also remember that if you are going to pick out the gloves, make sure to go a size class up. And if you're not too sure about your size at all, try out the sampler pack first. And honestly, out of all the products that I have reviewed so far on this channel, this is the one that I feel most comfortable recommending to most people. I usually have this philosophy where I say, you know, not everything is for everyone, but there's something out there for everyone. But this is one of those few things where, to the general public, they should be keeping their eyes out on. Well, there you have it. I did a thing. I hope you liked it. Again, I would like to take this time to thank both Kurt and Gian from Glow LEDs. Again, without you guys, I would know what videos I would be making, and from the bottom of my heart, thank you so much. All right, well, that's it for me. I'll see you all at the next one. Peace.